Whitlock, you buying the Celtics as a real threat to the Cavs?
You have to at this point. They've won 13 straight. Clearly, to me, other than Popovich, maybe they have the best coach in basketball, and you could make an argument he may be the best coach going. I'm just never. They lose Hayward, they lose Horford for a game or two, they lose Kyrie. Nothing matters. They just keep winning. Yeah, you have to take them as a real threat to the Cavaliers. Right now, if I had to bet, I would think the Cavs win in the postseason.
Yeah.
But is Boston a real threat? Hell yeah.
I think this exposes the anti-LeBron bias. So when the Cavs win the East, it's terrible. The East is terrible. Celtics go on a 13-game winning streak. Look at Boston. This is the best team in the world.
Oh, when do the Cavs win 13 straight? Have they won 13 straight?
No, they just win the conference every year.
Not right now. They're certainly not winning right now. In fact, they're struggling just to beat the Knicks. Barely, and it takes a massive comeback to do it. And let's put in perspective, Kyrie's biggest moments so far this year have been he's playing through this mask. He's playing with his teammates injured. There's 13 straight wins. He's talking about how he wants to wear a different mask so that he can pass the ball more. Meanwhile, the biggest moments from LeBron have been on Instagram and Twitter and talking about the King and Arthur and taking shots at Kyrie. We never know when he's going to implode. They're having closed-door meetings.
Never on the court.
They're having closed-door meetings already. So, yeah, the Cavs are unpredictable. Meanwhile, you've got consistency in 13 straight wins with the Celtics.
Everything you said is par for the course in Cleveland. Every year there's drama with LeBron. David Black gets fired. His first year there, they go 7-7. Which is what they are right now. They go 5-7, which is what they were a few games ago. So this is just how the Cavs are. LeBron functions well in dysfunction and chaos, and that's why he's constantly creating it. But I'll say this. Before the season started, I was 100% sure Cleveland wins the East. After Gordon Hayward goes down, I was 110% sure. Now, I'm 80%. I think Boston is legit. I agree with you on Brad Stevens totally, but I'm 80%.
We all know the NBA has always been about two seasons. It just is. There's a regular season and there's a playoffs. Regular season, Atlanta Hawks can win 19 straight. They did.
Yeah. Houston won 22 straight a few years ago.
Spurs struggle. Playoffs, same guys meet for 2 weeks. I see every one of your games. The second best player on the Celtics is Jaylen Brown. Okay, he can sneak into town. High IQ team preparation. You don't have rest, I do. Beats you, excuse me.
You're really upset about them.
But when LeBron gets to face Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for 2 weeks, now come on now.
Colin, I think what you're saying is true. And God forgive me for saying this, the gap at the coaching position is enormous. And I think that makes a difference.
LeBron is the coach of that team.
Yes, versus Brad Stevens. That's an enormous gap that they're going to have to compensate for, and I don't know if they can. And look, winning is a habit, and it has a momentum of its own, and the Cavs aren't in the habit right now in this regular season of winning a lot of games.
Last year, the Cavs were 30-30 over the last 60 games. They lost 7 of their last 11, and then we saw what happened in the playoffs. So they can turn it on. There's no question about that. And what everybody's forgetting, this is not the Cavs. The Cavs traded their second-best player, and the guy they got to replace him is hurt. So we won't know much at all about the Cavs until Isaiah Thomas gets back.
And that's the other thing. This Isaiah Thomas thing, listen, the Cavs have a lot of issues on paper. It's like they're old. You're going to ask, like, stars to be role players, bored. But we should also acknowledge Isaiah Thomas is a tremendous player. Now, he's not 29 a game, Isaiah. He's not. But he's good. He's an elite scorer in the NBA.
He's also coming off of massive injury. You have no idea what he's going to be like when he comes back. Then you have to worry about they already have chemistry issues. Now you insert him into that, which disrupts things even more. And to your point, yeah, they just turn it on, and that's just what the Cavs have shown us year after year. But at some point, can you rely on that? Or that's going to get old. That wears you out. If they don't want to be tired by the time the playoffs come, they're going to have to go into overdrive. But too late.
Isn't this a topic we had a year ago? And the year before that, and the year before that.
Like, but at some point, it's going to get old.
But old or not, LeBron's still the best player in the world.
There's a conversation about Cleveland, but the new ingredient is Boston. Boston has the third, fourth best player in the league.
Yes.
match.
Third or fourth best player in the league?
Kyrie?
He's
Right
not
now-
that high.
He's good.
Look, if
Third
they
is
keep
right.
doing what they're doing, he's going to win MVP,
No,
Chris.
James Harden's the MVP right now. There's no question about that.
Over
James
a man
Harden's
that's-
numbers are. Kyrie Irving's PER is 22. That's like 30th in the
13
league.
straight.
But
Chris.
That's more Brad Stevens. Kyrie is great. Don't get me wrong, but third or fourth player,
Also,
best player
the
in the league.
NBA
Slow
is
down.
not just about having the best player. LeBron was the best player in the league in Cleveland before he left. He couldn't get anywhere. Who's your second and third and fourth best player? You don't win in this league unless you have a third elite player.
Howard, I'm a big Steve Alford fan. He's from Indiana. He's just like me. Indefinite suspension. Those don't last very long. Should they have been expelled?
Yeah. This on so many levels is such bad judgment. I think it's a perfect time to launch yourself away from the Ball family. I was really disappointed last week when this happened, and they asked LeVar Ball, they said, what do you make of this? And you'd put UCLA in a horrible light. And he said, it's no big deal. He was probably talking about his son. It was a huge deal here. He had no sense of how big a deal this was. And I got to be honest with you. This is on so many levels. This was not like shoplifting a Tootsie Roll or a Heath bar. This was going into multiple high-end stores, almost like it was a game plan. And theft, 3, 4 stores, security, international. You should be so honored to go on a road trip as a college student. And there was just hubris and arrogance, no apology, no dignity. I think it was an egregious mistake, and I would expel him.
Well, I agree with you because they're on a trip. Their school president's with them. The athletic director's with them. It's international. Anytime you get involved in anything where the president of a country has to intervene on your behalf,
Yikes.
that tends to mean the consequences should be significant. I don't want to get on such a high horse, though, that I forget who and what I was as a college kid. And, it wouldn't have been in China, but I could have been convicted of this.
At Louis Vuitton?
No, convenience store. I used to steal sandwiches.
7-Eleven.
Yeah, I used to hit the
Sandwiches,
7-Eleven pretty hard. Yeah, shopping.
Food? No.
So I don't want to get on too high of a horse, but again, I do think you're in China. I mean, again, these kids should be worldly enough to understand the country they're in and the ramifications.
This was an international incident.
To me, they had 3 different opportunities to say, should we maybe not do this? And then they're like, no, let's go ahead. Let's go to Ferragamo next. So they were actively knowing what they were doing, risking their university's reputation, risking Steve Alford having to spend hours in jail. And they could have been there for, 10 years they were looking at as punishment. And I agree with you. Listen, people make mistakes. You should get second chances as long as you own what you did. But you have to send a message to these kids, and I think you do need to expel them because, listen, they can get an opportunity somewhere else.
Exactly.
But they do need to learn a serious lesson, and it's too easy to let them off the hook. No charges, no jail time, indefinite suspension, so we don't even know how long that is.
Well, look, expulsion was certainly justified. There's no question about it. I agree with you guys. This was terrible, all right? It wasn't like one store. When it's 3, it seems premeditated.
Exactly.
Okay, however, if UCLA is true to its word, an indefinite suspension could be, I think it should be at least 10 games.
Yeah.
If it's 10 games, or it could be the entire season. Steve Alford says they have to earn their way back. They can't even practice until they earn their way back. As long as UCLA sticks to this, I think it's fine. It could be a 1-year suspension for all we know. I think they're young, give them a chance, but make sure this indefinite suspension isn't 1 game.
I am interested. About 2 years ago, UCLA signed a huge deal with Under Armour. And I know that Under Armour has had some misgivings about at least the Ball relationship. I'll just ask everybody here, do you think...
I hope that that's not true.
Well,
I hope that they don't get in business because that would be a really bad move.
But
for Under
I
Armour.
wonder, I just think to myself, this is a perfect ejection seat from the Ball family, is it not?
Again, but there's 2 other kids involved, and the 2 other kids are more talented than LiAngelo Ball. Yeah. And so that's the issue for Steve Alford. If it was just LiAngelo, they would have dusted him.
Okay, that's what
They need these other 2 kids.
This is also setting a really bad precedent. Like, what is it that you have to do now to get expelled? If that wasn't enough... What do you have to do?
Listen, one of the points I've tried to make over and over and over to people, athletes have a privilege that we rarely talk about. And that's why, these athletes are social justice warriors and they want to condemn everybody else. We never examine the privilege of being an athlete and what, again, let's say these weren't basketball players. Do you think the president would have intervened?
No chance.
And so, again, we want to get on our high horse and there's white
They would
privilege.
have been in jail for 10 years in China.
Yes.
Now they have an indefinite suspension.
Privileged athletes, and
the
will they
president
learn a
will
They'll miss
lesson?
that game against Loyola Marymount, though.
Yeah.